What an honour for me today to have the greatest mentors in my life here. Susie has shaped my life over 46 years of being married, and I was nothing till I met you, of course. And now look at me. Look at me. Wakes up every morning, looks at me and says, "What a lucky woman I am." So, and of course, my mum and Pastor Stephen Marion have been our pastors for 50 years this year. I too gave my heart to Jesus when I was 14 years of age, August the 31st, 1975. And I went to school the next day and changed all my friends. And promise you, I needed to. One of my friends was so shocked with my decision, he gave his heart to Jesus the next week in church. And he's pastoring not far from here. His name is Pastor Ashley Good. And so we were in school together. I used to punch him and... Don't remind him of that bit, but fantastic. Well, it's good to see Pastor Steve. I've done 12,000 kilometres, I think, on my motorbike over the last 5 weeks. And now I got to tell you the truth. Not all of that was out west. I went to Phillip Island and watched some superbike racing with a couple of buddies and 2 unsaved friends. So 4 of us and 2 of them. And I don't like to be us and them, just great fellas, great professional business guys. And one of them was a Navy veteran, over 25 years in the Navy. The other guy owned franchises of one of the major chains you'd know about. And I tell you what, God nailed them. Just poured his love on them. Fantastic. So that was about 5,000 Ks. And I've just done 7,000 Ks up to the Gulf. Anyone been up to Karumba? You've got to say it like Calypso, Karumba. All right, but it's absolutely nothing like that. It's the only place in the 3 weeks I was going that we didn't get to Normanton. And if I said we got within 5 kilometres, I don't think I'd be lying. And we did 1,000 kilometres in a day, me and the regional leader for our group of churches. And so that in itself was very, very beneficial, and for him at least. And he's a good guy. But we got, and there was like a half a kilometre of water. It's all very flat up there. It's just a great big saucer. And there was about a half a kilometre of water in front of us. He suggested I get out the car and walk in front. I said, "Where did that water come from?" "That water's come from the estuaries up here, and they're all full of crocodiles, mate. I am not getting out of this vehicle." So we sat there for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, deciding what do we do. We probably could have got across, but they were expecting about 70 to 100 mil of rain that night, which if you know the top end, that means you're staying there for a month. And so we had to turn around. That was the only appointment we couldn't keep in the time that I was away. And then I ran away from floods all the way back. Again, you'd have to know this part of the world, but when you leave Mount Isa, you've got to get to a place called McKinley. And that's where, if you've seen the movie Crocodile Dundee, the pub is there. It's in McKinley. And the Walkabout Creek pub. And you've got to get across there because there's a bridge and that's what goes under. And so I was going. I won't tell you how fast, but I was going. I met another motorcycle rider in Cloncurry, which is about 170 Ks north of there. I said, "Mate, which way did you come?" He said, "I've come from McKinley." I said, "Is it open?" He said, "Just." I said, "I'm on it." I don't want to get stuck here for a month. So I went and they shut the road about 4 hours behind me. And then we just were beating floods the whole way down. Pastor Steve even texted me and was feeling sorry for me, which that was a miracle. Pastor Steve feeling sorry for me, that I was getting wet in the rain. I said, "Look, when you're not getting wet, it's 38 degrees. When you're getting wet, it's 23. I love riding in the rain. That's for sure. But dear, we did some. And of course, we stopped in every town that we came to where there was a great church. And in fact, I stopped in many of them that have churches but no pastors. And so I put a video together, put them on Facebook, tell everybody, "Look at this. There's a place for the preacher to live. Look, this is where the miracles happen. All we need is a pastor." Because when you go to a country town of 2,000, you're pastoring the entire town. Our pastors out there, they are in charge of the SES. They run the Anzac Day parades. They do the Watermelon Festival in Chinchilla. And don't laugh, 15,000 people turn up to that. They do the funerals for police officers to get... Our pastor did that. You pastor whole towns. So these men and women are pastors of thousands of people. and they're all over the bush in Queensland. So we've had a great time, and thank you from Susie, and I thank you very, very much for your prayer support and your practical support. All right, segue. In one of those towns, I was meeting the pastor. I won't tell you the town, won't tell you the coffee shop. That would not be good for the person I'm about to talk about. But I got there, he said, meet at this cafe. So I got there. And I went up to the counter, and because I'm 64 years of age, and said, look, I won't order yet. I'm expecting someone, but where are the restrooms? And she went like this. That's it. That was as expressive as she was. And so we did that, came back, and then I walked up to the counter with my friend, and she said, I said, wow, I'll have a latte, thanks, full cream milk, the biggest you've got. Crockery, please, not paper. Okay. And whatever my friend's having. What do you want? And until eventually I have to say, no smiles today? Now, you can talk to your neighbour and say, I bet you that one your friends. Well, I followed it up with, are you okay? Is there something I can help you with? She said, no, I'm good. And I'm thinking, dear God, help us. And you are in hospitality. Now look at me, she did her job. I'm not sure that she committed a what do we call it, sackable offence. She was efficient. But what did you say, James, about generosity? She was definitely not revealing her boss's heart, let alone the Father's heart. And I want to talk to you today, if I can, about generosity. And I've met some unbelievably generous people, Pastor Steve, that are not in the church family. I've met some incredible, generous people. But as a group, we can have a monopoly on this if we want to. That's what we can do. We can speak to the city, to steal James's line. We can reveal the Father's heart with generosity. Generosity is a game changer, And so I want to talk to you about that if I can. But before I do that, I want to tell you a story. And the title of my message is called Two Mowers. And here's where I got the title from. I have a friend of mine that, like me, and like James earning $2, what was it, $2 a week or whatever I used to work for $25 a week. I left my boiler making trade and went to Bible college. And because I was in Bible college, the pastor of the day asked if I would run the youth. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to run the youth. He said, we're going to offer you $25 a week, which is about $25 a week more than he was taking, by the way. And I was just thrilled. I thought, what an opportunity. And so we did that. And then at the end of that year, we continued on and became the youth pastors and the pastors of the church. But when I was back in that sort of, does anyone remember when you fill in the car with petrol, you had to do a search of the car first? I know we don't use cash much these days, but does anyone remember the days that before you put the nozzle in the tank, you had to do a little bit of recon under all the mats down the back of the seat, and you come up with $1.75, and so you got to have a good trigger hand, don't you? You got to stop that thing right on 175. You could go to 176 because I'll round that down, but don't go to 77 or they're taking it up. And now you need a loan. Am I got friends? You remember those days? Well, that's where I was, and the story I'll tell you is about another youth pastor friend of mine, and his mower doesn't work. It's broken. And so he's wondering what he's going to do, and he knows a guy in the church that doesn't fossick around his car to fill with fuel, and I don't now either. And but look, you still need miracles, you just need them at other levels. All right. And so he thought about this guy, and so he rang him up and said, buddy, and older guy, is there a chance I can borrow your mower? And the guy said, absolutely. Come on round, mate. Listen, I'm out. When you need it, it's late. He said, I can get it tomorrow. He said, okay, come around tomorrow afternoon after work and borrow my mower. So he went around to the guy's house the next day to borrow his mower, and he pulled up in the driveway in his bummy old ute that he used to have, and then the guy put up the door, and there was two mowers. And he thought, wow, now you got to understand, I'm one of 12 kids. when I grew up, and if I came to your house, if you had a hose on the front tap and the back tap, hello, Michael, indeed, you were wealthy beyond means. I mean, seriously, who has two hoses? Some of you are saying, oh, luxury. I mean, I grew up, one of 12 kids, I don't remember we never had an ensuite, I don't believe. It was, my mother used to fill the bath, because Mum had 12 kids in 16 years. So she'd fill the bath. She doesn't like me telling you this story, so I won't look at her when I say it. And if I go like this, she won't even hear me. But she changed my birthday when I was 4. My birthday is in May, but she put it back to February to get me out of the house in school. Because back then, people trusted people. If you want to know why they don't now, it's because of this. We've proved ourselves untrustworthy. So she just said, no, he's just small for his age. I found out about this misdemeanor when I was 15 years old because I had to repeat year 9. And didn't I put up a song and dance? I'm not doing that. You have to. You didn't pass 1 grade, mate. And now you need to know my dad left in that period, so there's reasons that it would have been good if an adult would have told me. But there wasn't a lot of info on that stuff back then. And so I just fossicked through and muddled through. And so I'm told I have to do grade 9 again. But I said, well, I'm leaving at the end of the year. And I was told, bye, said Mother. No, you're not. I said, I am. I'll be 15. She looked at me and said, no, you're not. And that's when I got my birth certificate. I've got like 6 older siblings that held this family secret. So my mother would fill the bath, and then she'd look at us, she'd line us all up like Jesse lined his boys up before Samuel, and she'd simply look at the cleanest. So they went in first. The second one would go in next. You can already tell that I was pretty well laughed, which is where I learned faith, although I didn't need faith to walk on the water by the time I got in. All right, it looked like the Yarra. No problem. We could grow stuff in there after we'd all had a bath. So I can talk to you about being poor for as long as you want to hear. But I want to talk to you about the game changer. The thing that breaks the chains of generational poverty, cycles of lack, and it's generosity. And to steal what James has said, dear, I wish that I had had that in my notes. You know, it reveals the Father's heart. So anyway, my mate, he's come from a similar background to me. And so he's rolled up the door and he sees 2 mowers and he goes, I mean, that just takes your breath away. One's newer than the other. He's expecting the guy will say, take that old one there, mate, bring it back tomorrow. And to his surprise, the guy said, put that one in the ute, mate, a new one. And he said, that's yours now. Brand new. He'd gone out and bought it and put it there. My mate's driving home, you know, the sort of guy that goes around the car looking for your coins so we can, go. Well, some people do pub crawls. We used to do petrol station crawls, and hope to find something that we could trade on the way. He's driving home and he just feels like little Lord Fauntleroy. You don't know who that is, but don't worry. Sounds important though, doesn't it? He just felt like Lord Muck. He's driving home. How blessed am I? That's what we say, isn't it? How blessed am I? And Holy Spirit spoke to him and said this. How do you feel? He said, I feel blessed. I got a mower. And then Holy Spirit said, who do you want to be? A guy who gets a mower? Or a guy who can give a mower? Epic Church, I am putting the challenge out to us as a community. There is something beyond blessing. You can be the person that gets a mower, but I want to speak you up that you might become a person. God, put your touch on me. I want to give a mower So I've called the message Two Mowers. And I want you to be a two-mower type of a girl, a two-mower type of a guy. And I, looking at you, look all smart enough to be able to translate that to being a two-cake person or a two-jacket person or a two-speedboat person, whatever you like. That's all good with me. We use the word sow. Well, in fact, I think we've got it. John 3:16, put this up here. See, this is a generosity. Again, we're talking about revealing the Father's heart. We got it right here in the pinnacle verse. If ever a verse is known by the mass of humanity, it's this one. Now, there was once an NFL player that used to put it on his, and during an NFL game, I think they had 16 million hits on BibleGateway.com looking up what's John 3:16. Or, sorry, Google that took them to Bible Gateway. Probably Viva, and look at it, it's just generosity. What does it say? For God loved the world. I missed the word, didn't I? I missed the word. The word that gives it all of its meaning. For God so. That's generosity right there. I got a daughter as a high school teacher with a major in English, so I rang her up. And I said, is so an adjective in that sense? She said, no, Dad, it's not. It's an adverb. I said, okay. Like a cow looking at a new gate. I said, good. So I'll read what she said. And here it is. We often use so when we mean to a great extent, which is why it's called an adverb. It adds to the verb. So God loved, that's efficient, that's obligation. Oh, I love you. But you can't say, I so love you like that, can you? You have to be in a different sphere if you're going to add the adverb. There's the generosity of God. For God, Gabriel, we've got to add something to that. I mean, love is like, I know it's eros and agape and philios and, but there's got to be. We've got to add something. What about the word so? Brilliant. That's an adverb. And it takes it, when we did math, and I'm sorry to put you in school here, I don't know what any of this means, but I can just quote it. They talk about something to the power of. Right? That's what the adverb does. It takes it to the power of. It's generosity on display. Look, my English teacher daughter kept speaking. She said, so is a degree adverb that modifies adjectives and verbs. Why is she so kind? Is totally a different stratosphere to why is she kind. She went on and said, we also use so as an intensifier to mean very, very. Now, you need to know I since got on Google and found she was quoting it. Now, Joe Biden's not the only person that steals speeches. We also use the word so as an intensifier to mean very, very. Driving on that road, you need to be so careful. You need to be very, very careful. For God very, very loved the world. Can you see it? The girl at the cafe, she couldn't be fired. She did her job. She was efficient. Epic church. We're not in Caloundra to be efficient. We're here to, if we're doing an arm wrestle, I'm not just going to hold, I've got to dominate you. We've got to swing the pendulum. We've got to, so very, very reach out with the love of Jesus. My favorite verse at the moment, and I've got to be careful not to wander here, but 2 Corinthians 5:20. You are Christ's ambassador. Do you know what an ambassador is, don't you? They are here, but they are not from here. They are here representing there. I don't want to be political at all, but we've got an ambassador in Washington at the moment that is not representing me. He's not representing the values of our country with our greatest ally, calling their leader a village idiot. You're supposed to be representing us there, you fool. You don't get paid there, you get paid from here while you're there. Now, I'm not even being political, I want to turn it back on us. We are Christ's ambassadors. We are not here spouting our own opinions. Oh, I don't feel like it. Don't care. It does not matter how I feel. I am here representing there, and the culture of that kingdom is very, very good. And if we could raise a community, that would change our city, it would do it on the power of this game-changing culture called generosity. All right, enough. Here we go. There's a verse, fortunately, there's a verse that for me is a template. All right, Isaiah 32:8. I think we can put it on the screen. It says, the generous man, ladies, I'm sorry, that should say person. It's the Hebrew word anthropos, which means man, and whoa, man. So it's sort of all of us. It's just abbreviated. And to help you further, I will be the bride of Christ if you will be the sons of God. So it's a spirit term. We're not trying to get anyone offside with the wrong pronouns here. Okay, so we're all good with that? You got your hat back on? Okay, so the generous person, there you go, devises generous things, and by generosity they will stand. Now, we've already heard about the so, which is an intensifier, because it means very, very. Well, this is generous, generous, generous. This is triplicate. This is like the dog's off the lead. But it's a template. Now, I want to read a story, if I can. I hope I'm going to ask you people here later if it's okay, because you'll tell me the truth. All right, I'm going to read a story now that we don't normally read this much of the Bible in church, but you'll like it. It's a good story. It's from 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8 to 17. And it goes, oh, yes, so good, she's leaving. Get me a coffee too, latte, 2 sugars, full cream milk, and a donut with real cream. Here we go. She's cool. She's cool. One day, verse 8, is that up there? Okay, I'm just asking you, could that one day be today? Why wait? One day, Elisha went to the town of Shunem. A wealthy woman lived there, and she urged him to come to her home for a meal. After that, whenever he passed that way, he would stop there for something to eat. She said to her husband, so he was in on the deal. She said to her husband, I am sure this man who stops in from time to time is a holy man of God. Let's build. So he's already coming. He's staying in one of the kids' rooms. But he's coming a few times now. And so she goes from service to very, very service. She says to her husband, he's a holy man of God, so why don't we build a small room for him on the roof? Let's furnish it with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, and we'll call it the Ibis Hotel. Then he will have a place to stay, look at this, whenever. What an invitation. Whenever he comes by. One day Elisha returned to Shunem, and he went up to this upper room to rest. He said to his servant Gehazi, tell the woman from Shunem I want to speak to her. When she appeared, Elisha said to Gehazi, tell her, we appreciate the kind concern you have shown us. What can we do for you? Can we put in a good word for you to the king or to the commander of the army? No, she replied. Not like, no. It was like, no. It's like, no, it's all good. She says, no, she replied. My family takes good care of me. Verse 14, later Elisha asked Gehazi, what can we do for her? Gehazi replied, she doesn't have a son and her husband is an old geezer. Call her back again, verse 15. Elisha told him. When the woman returned, Elisha said to her, as she stood in the doorway,
Next year, at this time, you will be holding a son in your arms. No, my Lord, she said. Oh, man of God, don't deceive me. One version says, don't tease me. You've touched my pain. Don't get my hopes up like that. But sure enough, the woman soon became pregnant, and at that time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. Let's talk about generosity. Here's the first thing I want to mention. It's a value, this one. Is that when you do something generous, you got to see every generous opportunity as unto the Lord. That's where it starts. If you don't do that, it burns out. He is the one that regenerates and reciprocates. It's not tick for tack. It's not transactional. It's as unto the Lord himself that this happens. Stopping for a stranded motorist, an elderly person at the service station who's finding it hard to bend down, but you're peripheral enough to go over and say, I can put that air in your tyres. You say, oh, is that really going to change? It's a game changer. That's so good. That is generosity overpowering a city. Buying a book pack for your next door neighbour who's got 4 kids and opening the door for someone. Have you ever done this? Have you ever got out at the service station, there's 8 pumps, and you see the guy, so you try to finish before him. And so you start to walk, and then have you ever done that? Here's what you need to do. Run for the door. Unapologetic, just run. And when you get there, stop and open it for him. Said, just thought I'd open it for you, mate. He will not know what to do. I can't remember the circumstances of this, but I was at the gas station, service station in the last 6 months, and there was a girl, a single mum, another lady at the next Bowser, and I can't remember whether she was blocking me and I coming this way, she coming that way. She said, I'm not going to get much. I said, all right, go and hurry up, do it. And just get in your car, put it in, and then just go, I'll sort it. She said, well, I'm not going to have much. I said, that's all right, mate, it's all good. So I go inside, and I say to the lady at the console, hey, listen, I'll pay for the motorbike and whatever this girl here puts in. She said, yeah, sure. It confuses them. They don't know what to do. Oh, and they have to go, they got to pigeonhole that somewhere, don't they? Oh, do you know her? No. Do you like her? No. Because they've got to have a reason. Here's the reason. For God so loved. He just took it up a level. And you know what the girl at the console said next? She said, you sure you want to pay for this? I said, yeah, I told her I would. She said $120. I said, I'm not lying about that. She took full advantage of it. And you know what? If Jesus hung on the cross and said, take what you want, and you say, I don't need much, but then you think it through later, and then you take a full indulgence, you only make him smile more. You can't outgive him. You can't outlove him. I said, oh, knock yourself out. Let her go. She finally mercifully hung up, and off she went. Didn't come in to see me. Didn't come in and say thank you. Didn't get my rego number to send me a card later. I'm an ambassador. I don't get paid here. Tomorrow morning, I'll sit on a chair and have 15 minutes to talk to Jesus, and I'll get my pay. I'm here, but I'm not from here. I'm from the land of so. You know when you like quit a job? Have you ever quit a job and you're mid-project? All right? And so you just hand the keys in, don't you? Dodged a bullet. I did that once. I've got to be quick here, but it's church world, so I've got to talk to you like church world. We'd done half the house, and Susie and I had made a pledge for $30,000 over the tithe. Tithe's not giving, that's obeying. Giving is, so anyway, we did, Lily and you would have been there. It was no Love Boat back in those days, was it? It was a frigate. So we'd committed 30 grand, and sort of, Michael, a few months later, I was sitting in my office and I just felt Holy Spirit say, you don't work here now. He just took the mantle off me. I got I rang Pastor Steve straight away, we talked, and I resigned. Wow. I dodged the bullet. Woo! I don't have to give that 30 grand now, do I? Sat in my chair to get my pay the next day, read my word, had a little worship, and felt the Holy Spirit say, you work for me. You did it for me, not for the church. Long story short, some months later, we sent a check to a church we no longer were a part of, because every act of generosity is first and foremost done for the Lord. Colossians 3 says it this way, work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for Jesus or the Lord rather than for people. Have a look what the woman says in 2 Kings 4. She said to her husband, I am sure this man who stops in from time to time, what does she say? He is a holy man of God. We are going to make a contribution to the kingdom of God. So whether it's a book pack for your neighbor, opening the door for an elderly person, it's as if you opened it for Jesus himself. And you have come into the soul kingdom. Mother Teresa was an old nun who worked in India with lepers, and people were astounded because she touched them. We had, the COVID thing. Couldn't even go to people's funerals. And she's touching, hugging lepers and other transmittable, incurable diseases. She became so famous, people used to go over there just to watch her do it. And while there, 2 tourists, one said to the other, I don't know how she does that. He said, I couldn't do that for $1 million. And the other one, a little wiser, said, I don't think she does it for $1 million. And to quote the lady herself, she said, I don't think she does it for $1 million. Every single person I touch, I do it as if I'm doing it for Jesus himself. That is kingdom generous. Here's the second thing I want you to know about generosity. It is an attitude of your heart before it is an act of your hand. And here's our first stanza in our template verse. Isaiah 32 verse 8, it says doesn't say generous act. It says a generous person. It comes out of here. This is where it flows from. And it's absolute. Look at 2 Kings chapter 4 and verse 8. It says, one day Elisha went to the town of Shunem. Look at it, it says a wealthy woman lived there. I want to point something out here. And this is a very narrow definition. This is the New Living Translation. It calls her a wealthy woman. The New King James does not. The New King James calls her a notable woman. The King James calls her a great woman. I love the NIV. It says a well-to-do woman. Ooh, la-di-da. But see, you got to know, as soon as you read wealthy woman, you think, oh yeah, well, she's allowed to be generous. She's got a lot. A lot of wealthy people are generous. But the truth is, a lot aren't. I read The Millionaire Next Door book about 30 years ago to help my own journey. And the people that wrote the book interviewed hundreds of millionaires. They offered, everyone they interviewed, they offered $500 if they would sit down and let them interview them. They said, we can either give it to you or we can give it to your favorite charity. The overwhelming response to that was, I am my favorite charity. That's why I'm wealthy, is what they said. So please don't think that it's her wealth that gave her a vent. It wasn't her hand, it was her heart. No different to the heart of the people in Macedonia that Paul spoke about in Corinthians when he said they are being tested by many troubles and they are very poor. But they also are filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. That's how Paul described them. And he even goes on in verse 8 of that chapter and says that they said, you've got to let us give to the offering for Jerusalem. My mum's here today. There was a time in our journey when she was on my team as one of our pastors. She was already in a retired state, and we talked about so she could come and go as she pleased, but we gave her an allowance just to, and I hope that comes across like it was meant. But there came a time when we had a very tough season, as church plants can have. So I had to call the 10 full-time staff in those days. And I called the key ones in and said, listen, I'm going to put you all on 60% wages. For the next 3 months, you're on 60%. If you don't, you got to, I don't want an enlist, I don't want like a conscript. You got to be a volunteer. So if you don't like that, you're free to go. You deserve more. Go and get more. I don't want you to be shackled to it. And every one of them said, no, we'll do it. So they did it. And that was going to be for all the team. When they all left, one man came back, a man named Rick, came back and he said, Pastor, can I ask you a question? I said, yes, you can. He said, Pastor Billy, my mum, he was talking about, Pastor Billy, I mean, we can't do that to her. And I looked at him and said, okay, you tell her. You go and tell her, you heard her this morning, it's not the size of the dog in the fight you might have noticed. I said, you go and say, listen, we're all going to do it, but we don't think you got what it takes. He said, oh, I'll leave that one. Because it's got nothing to do what's in your hand. It's got everything to do what comes out of your heart. That's where generosity has its bend. Can I make this point? It's not generosity till it's personal. Pastor Steve, I'm getting a bit admin-y here, but I've been pastoring for 40 years. And I have had a lot of people. You don't mind hearing about how it works behind the scenes? I have a lot of people over 40 years. Hey, Pastor, can we get a coffee? I said, yeah, it'd be great, mate. I'd love that. Can we meet it? Yeah, it'd be fantastic. So they've made the appointment. You know, there's rules about these things. There are social rules about the person who makes the appointment. And so for 40 years, I'm having coffee with people. And then we get, oh, listen, I've got to go now, and they're off. Okay. No, I'll pay for both of them there. I'll pay for both of them. That's all good. And I'm thinking, he made the appointment, he's gone. You know, you're putting it back. What's your name? That's for sitting on the front row. There you go. If I had more, but I reckon before cup of tea time, you may end up with a couple of hundred. And I'm thinking, I didn't make the appointment, and I'm paying. And one day, I don't know, Pastor Steve, I think you're like me. It hit me. I worked out why. They think I've got a corporate card. That's the only logical reason. They think I've got a church card. Look at me. I've never had one. I just pay for it. It's not generosity if it doesn't touch you. Oh, take my work, you mate. Yes, yeah, use the boss's petrol. You're not generous. You may not even be legal, but you're definitely not generous. Now, you may have authority to give the work you. That's cool, but it's still not you. David said in Chronicles, he said, because of my love for the temple, I have used my influence through taxes to gather a certain amount of money so Solomon can build the temple. But it doesn't stop there. And then he says, and because of my personal love for the temple, I will give all of my riches. Now we know he's generous. Nehemiah built the walls. He said, every day I use 6 sheep, 6 goats, 1 heifer, 100 flagons of Bundaberg ginger beer. And then he says this, and I refuse to take the king's allowance for this, because the people already had a heavy burden. And he said, Lord, bless me for this. In other words, he said, I know where I get paid from. That's generosity. That's the so generous. Oh, I love it. Here's the third thing. The greatest level of generosity is when there is no expectation, maybe not even a hope, or maybe I should have said perhaps the greatest level of generosity, is when there is no help, no hope, no expectation of a return. I got a verse for you. Listen to this verse, Romans 5:8. God showed his, there's another adverb, great love. Doesn't say God showed his love. He's an adverb. It's a so-so. In that while we were still sinners, I don't know how much you had to offer God when you came. Hey, God, you'll be glad to get me, eh? I'm the man. You were nothing. And if you were something, I was 14 smoking White Ox under the library. I promise you, I had nothing to bring. And millions are going to go to a Christless eternity, not taking up his wonderful offer. But he did it because he's generous. I'll give you an opportunity in about 10 minutes, 15 max, to give your heart to Jesus. You've got nothing to bring him, but he's got everything to send your way. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. Oh, we got an older lady in our church, Honey Rose, in our church back home that we've handed on to our daughter and son-in-law. Her name is Rose. She got saved late in life, in her 70s. Bit of a staunch Catholic, but she's now full of the Holy Spirit. And Catholics are great when they get full of the Holy Spirit because they've got all the fundamentals. They believe in I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven, and they've got it all. They just go. And Rose's husband died. Her next door neighbour brought her to church. She got gloriously saved and filled with the Holy Spirit. She's in her 80s, Rose. And but we took up a half of the house to build a youth hall. We call it the Champion Factory. Someone said, what do you call it? I said, we're calling it the factory. They said, what are you making there? Champions. So we put it out there. And I don't know who gives, I don't ask. But the day came where we got this 150-ton crane to come to our site to lift the building that was on the pad where we wanted to put the new factory. Now, the building it had to lift was only 8 ton, but the crane was at full extent, 150 shut, 10 ton, fully extended. He picked it up, swung it all the way around to the total other side of the lot, an 80 square metre building, which is now our food shop. To my surprise, Rose drives in a little Honda Civic. And I said, what are you doing, Rose? She said, just wanted to see where me $5,000 was getting spent. I said, did you put $5,000 into that? She said, absolutely. Anything for the next generation. She's never going to walk in it. She has no hope of getting a return off that. She'll be dead before they're mature enough to become the man. But blessed is the man that plants a tree under whose shade they will never rest. That's generous. And that's what she did. I love it. All right, here, we've got to go quick. The fourth thing, generosity gives from, not to. It always gives from a culture, not to a need. Pastor Steve, you know I used to pastor a church in a part of the south of Brisbane that the real estate agents called the armpit. I'm not proud of that. We lived to see it redeemed, but that's what they called it. I remember refurbishing and buying a building and saying to the mayor, I'm making a building where the people here don't feel at home. He said, what do you mean? I said, I've been to their home. He said, oh, good. It's called Redemption and Lift. But we would see someone needing send them out for their wedding. They've never eaten anything other than Macca's. So we give them an escort and take them to the Hilton. Why? Because that's who we are. Alexander's getting along on his pony. Think 2 coconuts, Monty Python. And the beggar says, Master Gold, Master Gold. So Alexander stops. You're about to find out why his surname was the Great. He stops, calls one of his attendants, give the man gold. And the attendant, obviously the treasurer, said, "Sir, gold for a beggar, for a beggar. Surely coppers will do." Epic, you got to listen to me. Alexander said, "Coppers may be good for the beggar, but only gold is good for Alexander." Listen, when we go out there and stretch our hand out for Jesus, you give heaven's best. You reach out with a soul love. Why? Because you're Epic Church. You're an ambassador. You don't live here, you live somewhere else. You're just here representing. And you minister out of the culture of where you're from. Oh, I love it. Look at 2 chapter 4, verse 13. Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tell her we appreciate the kind concern you have shown us." And she says, "What can we do for you?" Now look at me. She's a wealthy woman. She's an influential woman. He knows she doesn't need anything. There's a Porsche in the garage. You know, like there's a hose on the front and the back tap and one on the garden shed too. But he has to find vent for his culture. And his culture is generous. So he calls Gehazi. Gehazi hasn't got a clue. If you keep reading, you'll find out he's not even on the same page. Oh, jeepers. We had a youth pastor once, Pastor Steve, and he wasn't the youth pastor for very long. You were still the pastor, but he had a youth event at his home, and I was around there. And I said to him, I called him Bill, I said, "Bill, mate, fanging for a coffee. You got some coffee?" He says, "Yeah." "Go into the kitchen, not the one on the bench, that's for them. That's for the mongrels. In the cupboard, move the cup, reach at the back, Makona." Oh, mate, this guy lived high on the hob, didn't he? And I don't want to overdo this, but I was sort of repulsed. So you mean you've got a different standard for you than you have for the people you've been called to minister to? Like Pablo's good for them, but only Makona's good for you and your special people? It's not what we do, Epic. It's just not what we do. It's not our culture. If they say walk a mile, we will walk too. If they say give me your jacket, we will give them our shirt. Everything I know about generosity, I learned from the woman in the middle and the man on the end. I found this in the Bible later. Everything I know, I learned from the 97-year-old in the front row after her husband left her. Never missed a tithe, never missed a day in church. Always saw God provide. And then God was gracious enough to put this silly kid of 13 under the tutelage of Gamaliel, or better. I found it in the Bible later. But I came to Planet Generous when God put me under the canopy of Pastor Marion. Pastor, see, you got to understand the privilege you got here. You have been called to change the city. We've got to hurry. Here we go. Number 5, generosity's impact cannot be measured. 3 minutes, I'm done. Generosity's impact cannot be measured only by what's been given. And you need to know this. Some of you say, but I don't have much. I was in a shop with Shane Baxter, and we're just like two giddy teenagers, trying to order a hamburger. Do we want, cooked onion or fried onion? Till finally I see a guy like this on the counter. We're out the back of Bendigo somewhere riding motorcycles. And so I finally say, "It's good to be peripheral." I say, "Are you good, mate?" "I only want a Coke, mate." What he meant to say was, "Hurry up." I said, "So that's it, that Coke?" He said, "Yeah." So take it, go. He said, "You can't do that." I said, "I just did, mate. I think if you wait for the till, you're going to find it's about $3. I'm in huge debt. So just go." "Mate, you can't go giving stuff away like that." See, they don't know what to do. It's a game changer. It's not the amount. It's the culture. He said, "You can't do it, mate." I said, "Mate, if you don't walk out the store with your Coke, they'll be dragging you out. So get on your bike." He left the store like this. "Oh, mate, he just bought me a Coke. He just paid for me Coke. He just paid for me Coke. Oh, man, he just paid for me Coke." It's not what you give, it's the Spirit for how it gets into your hand. The woman wasn't wealthy, she was healthy. All right, we got to finish. That's enough. That's enough. I want to challenge you to be a two-mower person. There are some churches you couldn't preach this. You know, like Paul said, in one of Paul's letters, he says, I can't teach you the stuff I want to teach. I've got to go way back to these. But you're Epic Church. You are totally different. You're up for this. We could have a monopoly on this in Caloundra and the Sunshine Coast. There's individuals that are generous, but there's no group that has it in their mission statement. But we do. I want to challenge you to not be the person that said, God bless me, but God, let me be a blessing. Acts 20:35, that there is more blessing when I give than when I receive. I pray you receive the word of the Lord.